Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Sandra D, where we journey beyond the surface to uncover the essence of living an authentic, affluent life. I'm Sandra D, your companion guide on this path of self-discovery and empowerment.
I'm on a mission and I won't quit now. In a world full of followers, I'll be a leader. In a world full of doubters, I'll be a believer. I'm stepping out with...
So, episode number 2. I've been thinking about what I'm going to talk about in these episodes on a podcast, my new podcast, which I'm excited about, and I hope you're excited with me. Today, I thought I would just piggyback on what I spoke about last week. And of course, I spoke about my spiritual journey, which began with a lot of chaos. But again, what wasn't clearly outlined as to what was the one thing, what was my one aim. It was really being a leader. And today's episode is called Leading from an Emotionally Intelligent Mindset. Yes. So I really think that's been the goal all along. You know, I grew up with 2 siblings. I came much later than my brother was 5 years older than me. My sister 4 years older than me. For some reason, I was always inspired when we were in a group setting. They would ask, who's older? I would always jump in front and say, I'm older. And, it's interesting because I always did look older than my sister. She didn't wear makeup. She wore more conservative clothes. I was always wearing high heels and very dressed to the hilt, and I looked the part of the older sibling because I guess I knew that at some point, something deep inside of me knew that I was going to have to take the lead. And in my family, what did that look like? Well, I mentioned last week that both my siblings, my beloved sister Karine, and in honor of my sister, I'm wearing her bracelet. This is a bracelet that she bought in Venezuela on one of her business trips. And my brother Patrick. And Patrick was more had a quiet disposition, and he was, I believe, a little bit more reserved. I came out and I was like, I'm taking on the world. I want this to be on this planet and I want to have fun. I am told this is an unlimited experience. And again, I'm paraphrasing what my guides told me before I came here. But I knew that this was going to be amazing. And I've had so much fun in my journey. But the journey of becoming a leader, what is a leader? To define a leader is, most people would think it's these people that make headlines, these people who are actually making decisions for the planet, for their country, for their corporations. And for, my father, was very high ranking in the military. My mother was his right-hand woman in the home because they operated from a very firm stance because, my country at the time had a very strong leader. And I've asked myself many times, how do these people command a crowd? Have you thought about that? I asked myself, how do you get millions of people to agree with your project, your idea? There's a famous writer, Victor Hugo, who says, there's nothing like an idea whose time has come. I feel that the masses put the ideas out and the leader steps into it to represent the idea. So the leader doesn't show up with the idea. I think the people summon the idea from within themselves. And then that person just shows up. I mean, if we look at the times and the leaderships that we've experienced over the decades of as long as I've been on the planet, I'm not a big history buff, but once in a while I look at those who have left a legacy. I'm from Haiti. And of course, there was Jean Jacques Dessalines and there was Toussaint Louverture, who took that country in 1804 from slavery for the first time. I mean, no one had done that. Not even the United States. The United States came after. And that's why, Haiti was such a threat to the region, because these 2 Black individuals who had known nothing but bondage all their lives, and the ancestors before them, because that island, the first slaves, I believe, that landed on that island were 400 years prior. So for some reason, these people within themselves says, no, this is not working for me. We're going to do things a little different. And how many times have we seen these disruptors? We have them on the planet now. We've had them before. Some of my greatest disruptors and those I call on to for spiritual teachings. You have Jesus, you have Buddha, and you have the philosophers and the Greek philosophers. And also you have African philosophers, you have Indian philosophers. These philosophers, these people didn't go outside to get their wisdom. They actually went within. Whether they actually structured a dedicated space, what like I do, I go off on retreats that are 10 days, 30 days, 20 days, 3 days, more recently, 45 days. I've gone off to India, I've gone off all over the planet, the globe, to be able to find that center that is so well described and inspired in some of these sacred texts. And, my background is, I'm from Haiti. Haiti's a Catholic country. Both my parents were born Catholic. My mother became Methodist when her mother died because her father was Jamaican. And, most Jamaicans subscribe to the same religious premises as the British. So she started attending St. Paul Methodist Church. My father, 14 years old, 14 young man, 14-year-old, goes to his mother and says, you know what, I'm in Catholic school. I'm paraphrasing. I've heard the story from my mom. I'm in Catholic school. My neighbor's Methodist. I think I'm going to start going to church with him. And at 14 years old, my father disrupted his family and said, this Catholic religion is not working for me. So I'm going to go to this church, St. Paul's. And that's where he met my mother. He met my mother when he was 14 and they started dating when they were 16. And got married at 26 in the Methodist church. And that's where I grew up. I grew up in the Methodist teachings. They sent us to Sunday school. And I remember there was a missionary that was Pastor Block that was established in the city that within Port-au-Prince. And they sent us to Sunday school. I actually have pictures of me, little me in Sunday school, so, but then I attended Catholic schools because Catholics had the best, providing extremely in-depth education. Some people call it brainwashing. I don't know. Maybe I was being brainwashed by the Catholic schools. But nevertheless, I got a great education. But I'm now undoing that brainwashing. There was brainwashing everywhere. But they did the best they could. And that brainwashing did serve me in certain ways because what did it provide? So I grew up with a military father that rose to the ranks of general, and a mother who was a very biblical individual. Everything she did was based on the Bible. She didn't know anything else. She said the only book she really was attracted to was the Bible. She's read other books, I think mostly like cookbooks but her book until today, my mother's almost 90 years old, she's still reading the Bible. She reads it religiously, and she tells me, go read the Bible. So today, I don't just read the Bible, I read others' teachings because I love to hear how people can translate their story in parallel to some of these characters that we find in these sacred texts. Because one of my favorite teachers, Jesus, says, you will do greater things than I. I'm always paraphrasing. I'm not one to just be a Bible thumper and verbatim. I have all these scholars that can verbatim, speak on the Bible. I'm not one of those. I'm a little bit more lay when it comes to that, a little informal. I'll just grab some keywords and make it work for me. So Jesus said, greater things that I have done that you will do too. What he's saying is, in essence, is I'm giving you these teaching and I want you to go out there and do greater things. And that's the most profound teacher. And I do believe if parents could actually lead their children to understand that you don't have to be what I am, you just have to be you and do greater. So the child should be inspired by the parent, but also be inspired to level up, whatever that looks like for the child. And so for me, my background is, I'm a mediator, I'm a conflict resolution professional. So I believe I got that from my father because my father was an attorney. He was a diplomat. He was a general, a very well-disciplined man. And my mother was a finance professional. She was the one that managed all of our businesses in Haiti. We had land and houses and real estate and et cetera, et cetera. So, and now, my background, I'm a banker, investment banker. So I raise capital. The thing is, I don't think my parents really made sure that I followed their footsteps. As a matter of fact, my first career was as a fashion designer. Yes, I was a fashion designer. That creative side of me was really unleashed. And because it went along with being a party girl, right? I had the clothes and I said, why not? I followed that path. And, till my father passed, he was still thinking I was a fashion designer. I had finished college. I had my undergrad is in psychology. So he was still thinking, called me my fashion designer. And I told my mother, I said, doesn't he know I'm no longer in fashion? Anyway, I guess he chose to see me whatever he chose to see because he always knew me as a fashionista. Look at me, I'm dressed down today. I decided I would be a little bit down to earth. I have earrings, of course, and a little makeup, but just a t-shirt. And that's going to be my theme because I don't want the attire to distract from the message. And what is the message? So the message is this: leadership with empathy. And one of my greatest, again, I mentioned the teachers that I loved so much. And one of my favorite teachers, Marcus Aurelius, said, what isn't good for the hive isn't good for the bee. So those people who call themselves queen bees out there, all of them, including me. So when I started my journey to adulthood, I wanted to be the adult in the room, the older siblings. Well, guess what? My sibling, I joke about this, but it's not really funny, but I joke about this, but because I've outlived my siblings, because my sister passed, she was 32, 33. Oh, it's fading. And my brother was in his early 40s. So, and, beyond that, I won't get into the details of how old I am. But yeah, so clearly I've outlived them, but I do believe life is eternal anyway. So I don't believe they've died or they've gone, they're buried or their bodies disintegrated. So my brother's being carried around in a vase right now. And I'm like, that's not my brother. My brother's spirit lives on. It lives on within me. As I'm talking about him, I'm bringing his spirit to life. And, I have a lot of people that I have loved, as I said last week, who I no longer have the ability to see physically. But what I'm inspired to do is to get really quiet and connect with that spirit, that essence, who they were. For instance, I'll have Pa, which is how I call my puppy. I would say, how did you do it? How were you able to rise in such a tumultuous time in Haiti to rise to the rank of general? Remember, he became a general after the Duvalier left, the Duvalier government. And the president of Haiti at that time afterward was someone that I used to go to whose house my father used to take me to his house. I remember he had a wonderful estate in the countryside, and I would watch the men drink, and I played with his daughter, and that was it. That was my daddy and Batty and his friends. So to those people who see these leaders, and for me, I just saw my daddy. But I just still ask, now that my father's passed, I'm able to connect with his spirit and say, how'd you do it? How did you rise to such prominence? My father's not someone who grew up with extravagance, affluence, but he was truly affluence within. His spirit was in. And that's the essence of this podcast, which is when we really go within, to connect to that pure center of ours, that's where we get all our ideas, all our values, and all our guidance. And that's for me. And I know people may disagree with that. I'm not asking anyone to agree with me. I'm just sharing with you what I have come to understand and what I'm cultivating on a daily basis so that I can be stronger on this physical realm. There's so much going on right now, so much going on. And which is what inspired me to do this podcast on this topic of empathic leadership, emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence as a leader is so necessary. So Marcus Aurelius says, what's not good for the hive cannot be good for the bee. How many of our leaders right now are really considering what is good for the whole? What's good for those people who come underneath them? You have been given a proxy. When you are leading, you are given a proxy, whether to work in government, whether to lead a corporation, whether it looks like a production studio, whether it's the media, whether it is, let's see, social media, whether it is a hospital, whether it is a corporation, whatever it is, whatever you call yourself to do, or whatever assignment you take. And even if it's a private organization, you are there to make sure that whatever decision you take serves the whole. So as I was really pondering and thinking about what inspires me, and again, I disrupted that, life of superficiality that my father provided me with. And I'm not saying nothing good came of it. Of course, I had such comforts and I'm grateful for that, but it wasn't bringing me peace within. So the peace within was something nobody out there could give me. I have gone to many, many lectures and I was reading many, many books. But for me, that peace really came within as I dedicated the time on a daily basis. And sometimes, those days were extended to 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, 45 days to find that peace. Because what really causes the drama and the trauma and the chaos, it's not so much what somebody's doing to me. It's how I'm reacting to these people, how I'm losing sleep over what they did. And I curse up a storm. Let me tell you, the last 10 years, cursing up a storm. People who knew me prior to 10 years ago probably know me as just being very polite, just like I was raised, very polite and saying, God bless you. Well, I think the alpha me has really come to, I guess, to the surface because sometimes it requires that I use profanity to stabilize myself. The profanity that most people would say, I'm sorry, that kind of language is not allowed here. Well, that's how I grew up. Remember, I went to Catholic school. My mother, that kind of language is not allowed here. Well, guess what? So I pushed it down. A dear friend or someone I met in the recovery environment, I was having a meltdown 2 months ago because something major happened and I lost mastery of myself. So she said, how are you going to address this? Are you going to be a toddler? Are you going to be a teenager? Or are you going to be an adult? And I thought about it. And she said, think about how one reacts as a toddler. You throw tantrums, you want don't tell me I can't have this, mommy or daddy. I want my way. I want that toy. I want that car. I want whatever, that trip, whatever it is. Give me a check. I want it. Well, with age comes a little bit of more reason and logic. You start thinking strategically. And I learned that, as a teenager, I would just rebel. I would just be like, fine, I don't need you. I don't need you, mom and dad. I'm just going to do it my way. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it myself. Well, look how that worked out for me. So I bumped into a few hard places. And so then I think about it as the adult, how would I want to address that? I would say, I think I would sit with it, not react. That is it, not reacting. So as I think about the leaders of the world, right? So that's something for you to do as well. If you think about the leaders of the world and how they are performing now, and I'm not throwing stones at anybody, I am agnostic when it comes to the globe. I look at characteristics. So the leadership around the globe, whether it be in a corporation that you work in, whether it be in government, Washington, D.C., number 10 in London, whether it is in Moscow, whether it is in Beijing, wherever it is, Caracas in Venezuela, Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Well, this how I just not talked about Haiti because there's no leadership there. None. Nothing there is organic. Nothing in that country is organic. And I'm going to throw a little shade at Haiti once in a while, but I'm not going to make Haiti the highlight of my podcast because I don't become a nice person when it comes to that country. It has been a disgrace. And yeah, I'm hoping that those Haitians who are listening to it will be able to gain some wisdom and see how we can help, our country and that country we were born in, because now the United States is my country, an American citizen. But going back to the stage, the world stage, and how we watch these people perform on our behalf, wherever you are, you have a leader that is performing on your behalf. They are there to serve us. My country had an emperor. We've had many, royals around the world. We still have some royals on the world stage governing. Nothing wrong with that. It's a system of government that the body of people have accepted. May not work for me, but it works for them. I'm not here to judge anyone. Again, this is just a system. So you just have to ask yourself, how does that performance that this person is doing on your behalf resonate? And sometimes, when you work in a large corporation, I've worked for big banks, name them, I've probably worked in them, international banks and American banks. And I won't name him, but there was one superstar CEO that I thought was like, OMG, I love him. And then get up close and personal, and you're like, oh, Lord, is that how I want to be? I mean, he was just signing off on every headline. Every time there was something cool, he was supporting it. He was endorsing it. And is that really how we want to do this? Is this how we're trying to, are we winning votes? Are we want to stay as head of the CEO? But do we really read the room to understand that there's not one personality in the room? There is not just one person in that audience. There are multiple people in that audience. Are you making sure that you are serving the whole and not just that one? And I know it's challenging, right? Because as humans, we want to make sure that when we are on the world stage, everybody applauds and say, we love you. But are you just trying to get the applause? Or are you trying to really make change and make sure things happen to improve society? Because society right now needs the ones that are willing to grind. There's a saying, and again, I'm going to butcher this quote, and I don't even know who said it initially, but I heard it once on a political podcast, and it goes, strong men make good times make weak men make bad times. And it repeats. Push, start, repeat cycle. So where are we now in the cycle? Where are we? Are we in the good times? I want somebody to tell me this is good time for them. And good time doesn't have to be, I have $1 billion in the bank. Good time is, am I sleeping at night knowing that tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to wake up to, things are moving along and it's improving my life. And I look forward to the future for my children and my grandchildren. And those are good times when there is a visionary at the head of the table that says, I'm going to take care of my family first. Yeah, no neighbors. When my families are taken care of, I will take care of my neighbors. You cannot, and so I'm not going to get political on this podcast because it's a general podcast about leadership, right? So again, as we talk about the leaders of the world, because right now, politics and business are sort of intertwined because, you have great personalities at the head of the tables. You have the tech community, you have the media, you also have the finance and investment world, because the world does not run without money. And I remember I was listening to a podcast or an interview with Larry Fink, who's the head of BlackRock. And he said he had interest in politics once. And I applaud him in his path and, what he's accomplished in his life. He said that he had aspirations to be in elected office. And then he had like a nugget or, light bulb. And he was like, he realized that the politicians really didn't have power. Who really had the power? Who really were leaders of this world? Guess, I know you know by now. Yeah, those who are controlling the finances of the world. Not necessarily those people who make the policies, because the people who have the money are the ones who influence the policies, right? So again, how are we, Marcus Aurelius again, are we thinking about the hive, or are we thinking about just the bee, the one bee? And I endeavor every day to be that empathic leader that has emotional intelligence. And a little bit about what emotional intelligence is. There's something in your gut that tells you if something is off. And that's where that emotional intelligence is. It's not necessarily logic. I mean, you can cerebrally process it. You can go into your brain and because I'm finance, you can crunch numbers but when something is off, right here, it's off, right? I'm holding if for those of you who are not watching, I am pointing to my solar plex and I'm pointing to the center of my chest. That's, something's off. And also below that, there's what you call the gut. When something's off. So some of the greatest leaders, and some people may get triggered by this, Donald Trump is someone who does not drink. And that's why I think I have listened to him more than the average, leader out there, because I think there's something about someone who doesn't numb themselves to exist on the planet. Again, I've had the experience of numbing myself, and sometimes I still can numb myself because when I'm streaming, a whole day, watching something the whole season, that's numbing myself. Whether I'm shopping, and so, but I'm mindful of that. I'm mindful, and sometimes I make a conscious decision. I'm going to numb myself from tune the world out. And that's okay, as long as I have that awareness. But though, when you have some people who are, in the finance world, you have a lot of people who are numbing themselves, unfortunately, with drugs and alcohol or whatever, sex addiction. And I've gone to programs that help you balance what is love and what is sex, the difference between that. And I'm not apologetic about it. And I just wanted to learn how to be a more centered individual. And that's one aspect of my individuality. As a young adult, I didn't necessarily know how to balance romance with sex. So I'm forthcoming with that. I had to learn. I had to learn in therapy, and I had to learn through some of these 12-step programs, which were extremely helpful in helping me to understand what appropriate behavior is in a romantic relationship, inappropriate behavior. I mean, I'll come from a culture, Haiti, where sex is power. People were throwing themselves at my father, even though he was married to my mother. So, and my mother culturally accepted it, because there are some cultures who say when a man is powerful, some of the perks that come with it are lots of sex. Anyway, I don't want to get into that topic. But yeah, some cultures feel that. I mean, there are cultures where men are allowed to have multiple wives. I don't necessarily feel like they fell in love with every single one of them. I think it's just, you have a variety of people you can have sex with. That's really what it is. And no offense to anyone who subscribes to that. I don't. And so I'm not judging anyone, but, having one partner and is quite strong mastery. And that's what leadership is. Leadership is really self-mastery. So I talked about the journey from my chaotic, alcoholic, dysfunctional life to coming into the awareness that there is no way I can survive this addiction if I don't master myself. My aunt Renee used to tell me, master yourself. You put a circle and then you put you in the middle and you master yourself. Nothing outside that circle can make you you unless you allow it into the circle. So that said, my Aunt Renee was a powerful woman. This is a woman who was a business accountant, in her day. She went to New York. She moved by herself with two sons, and, powerful woman. She's one of my mentors in my heart, and she passed on, and she's living vicariously through me. I don't have much of her like blings, other people do, but you see the smile on my face. And that means that, but the lessons that she left for me, because I share her DNA. These people that have passed on, that all of them, her sons, my cousin Jules, I share his DNA. Not many people can say that. And so my parents' DNA taught me self-mastery. My mother knew one man. I can't say that. I've known many. And it's nothing to judge me about me. I did the best I could. I was not inspired to marry when everybody else was marrying, because I had so much going on. Sister dying, brother dying, dad was dying, everybody was dying. So all I had to do is stabilize, right? So I chose the road of recovery. And so when I talk about self-mastery as a leader, it's being able to stand in a crowd And Xi Jinping comes to mind. I mean, this is a man, and also Modi. These are two men, two individuals who are governing billions of people. I can't imagine. I govern more than 20, and I'm always thinking, what are they thinking about me? Did I say the right thing? Did I not think? And these are insights that I'm providing because I've had to grow on the journey. And it's been quite, how can I say, it's been a hard lesson along the way because there was no one holding my hand. Of course, when you go into these 12-step programs, you have a mentor, you have what you call a guide, a sponsor. I opted out. The one woman that was a constant in my life for 25 years in recovery, she passed on last year. And yesterday, I went to accept my 25th year chip. And I was crying because I felt a little bit angry that she wasn't there to see me. And guess what? She was there because one of the women that accepted her 1-year medallion, her name was Rachel. Go figure. So I said, all right, Rachel, you're giving me hints that you were there with me. So I'm grateful to you. Self-mastery. She would tell me, you don't need a sponsor. And I'm not saying this for the community because she was my sponsor. She would never call herself that. That's why she kept saying, you don't need it. She was unconventional. She says, don't come. You can call me anytime, any day. Talk to me about anything. I'm here for you. So she was my mentor. What she did lead me to is to have self-reliance. What a great leader is someone who has self-mastery and can have an internal process and come out with an outcome that benefits the whole. You see, you first go within, you master yourself, because I've had many experiences with people, I could throw them under the bus 100 times and feel satisfied for 2 minutes. But the spiritual journey that I've chosen to be on does not allow me to do that. Because at the end of the day, the only person who will end up suffering from those actions will be me. You see, me. When I point this at you, and for those people who don't see this video, I have a trigger finger right now. When I point, you did this to me, I have 3 of them pointing back at me. So the only person here to change is me. That is self-mastery. That is the wisdom that I have gained. That doesn't mean you can't be angry. I'm still processing anger from many things that people have done to me many years ago. And just recently, 2 months ago, that was a big thing. And I have some witnesses to people who saw me unravel. But as a business leader, as what I call myself, a conflict manager professional, I'm a mediator, I'm a negotiator, I'm an arbitrator, inspired to bring more peace and wisdom to the planet. I cannot bring anything to the public discourse unless I've mastered myself. And emotional intelligence, which is the topic of this video, emotional intelligence is knowing that whatever thought, action, or deed that you are embodying at that moment is not beneficial to the whole. I don't have children. So my legacy to me is how I show up in somebody's experience. Maya Angelou said, you won't remember what people did, but you'll remember how they made you feel. How am I making people feel on a regular basis? Am I cheating them? Am I lying to them? I mean, I look at that whole debacle of Enron, right? Those of us who followed that, I remember my mother was living in Houston at the time. Yeah. What kind of repentance is there for these people? I do believe humans are flawed and we do have room for error. But when you take down a whole organization with you because of shame, and again, I touched on that last week, there's not a person on this planet who doesn't have shame. That shame of discovery that I'm a bad CEO, that I'm a bad vice president, that I'm a bad president of a country. That shame, is that shame so worth masking by lies? Then you coming out boldly and say, yeah, I did this, but I want to do better. I want to do better. That's emotional intelligence. Intelligence to know that you are not that mistake. You are not that mistake. You didn't come out of your mother's womb as that mistake. So clearly, you are not that mistake. Whatever conditioning it was that brought about that mistake can be corrected. It can be corrected. Correction is then the admission of guilt, admission of having taken a path that was destructive for you or for your family or for your corporation or for your country, but admission, because there's so much value when someone said, I'm so sorry I did this. They may reject you. There are a lot of people out there who don't think that humility is strength. When someone admits that they're wrong, that in all humility, not because somebody scripted, I'm so sorry, and then you see them going back to that same behavior, and they say, insanity is the same behavior doing over and over again, expecting different results. When you see that person say, I'm sorry I lost your pension, I'm sorry, I cheated on whatever, because, I'm speaking in general terms and in the micro and the macro, because a parent is actually a leader in a household. That's how I got my first exposure to leadership in my household. My father was a phenomenal leader. He was flawed in many ways. Like I said, many women out there wanted him or whatever. And I'm like, okay, and so I have women, true story. I have women who come up to me and say, your father was such a great, oh my God. And I'm thinking, you do realize that my mother was his wife. You shouldn't be telling me this, because that means what? You had a situation with him? Is that, but people know my father was a very, how can I say, charismatic leader, and I don't apologize for him. Clearly, I've healed all of that. I've had to work through it, but thanks, Daddy, you made me stronger for it. And so now when I see these flawed individuals, and women are not, unique. I mean, there are women out there who are doing all sorts of things, and people always throwing men under the bus, like men are so bad. No, there are some bad women. I have friends who are just bad. I don't call them friends. People I've known over my lifetime. Bad women. Yeah, they have no clue as to how they're affecting the whole, And on another video, I'll talk about narcissism, because right now we have a rampage of personality disorders, and you cannot tell me that these people are not mentally ill. So mental illness is when someone is not coming from the within, coming from that wholeness, coming from a place of unity, coming from how, being conscious of how they affect change, how they affect the planet, how they affect the community at large, their corporation. It's just me. I'm number one and you don't matter. So personality disorders is not being that natural born individual without the brainwashing, the conditioning that lies to us to say that one person is better than the other, one gender is better than the other, one country is better than the other, you get the message. But the point is, women are not immune to it. I'm one. I have stories, right? But guess what? I'm working on myself. So I'm not perfect, but I aim to be better. And that's why I'm doing this podcast. I am doing this podcast because I'm aiming to be better, and I'm aiming to release the shame. So this podcast, there was so much fear for me. And I said, I'm going to pretend this whole personality that I'm going to put out. And I said to myself, this is me talking to self. As long as I don't have anything to hide, as long as I don't lie about anything, I'm good. So if I said something that offended someone, if I said something that is untrue, knowingly or unknowingly, I aim to do better. And that's the leadership. And I'm not saying I'm like the ultimate leader, but I am saying that I'm inspired by those before me who have expressed some characteristics that I want to embody. Again, I mentioned my spiritual examples, which Buddha and Jesus, and then there was the last emperor, Marcus Aurelius, and my father, who was a military general, diplomat, my mother, who was a businesswoman, a leader in my household. Yeah, my mother was badass. So little me was like, I'm going to take the best of these two and then run with it. Of course, I made some major mistakes. And oh, I'm not going to forget my sister and my brother. My goodness, Patrick and Karen were they were just like, setting me straight. There's a picture of me, little me in my school uniform, and you see my brother telling me to stand straight in the picture. That's a leader. A leader is like making sure it's good for the whole. Because, if I look bad in that picture, he's going to look bad in that picture. My mother, before I left my house, when we lived in Washington, my father was serving as the diplomat in Washington. She says, you don't go out there because remember, you're representing this family. Yeah. My leader gave me instructions. She gave me instructions. You don't go out there and embarrass us. I'm not saying I did that perfectly, but I did my best. And today, I say everything I do. My dad gave me his name. My last name is Dorsey. His last name was Dorsey. When people hear me in my community, they know who I am. So I'm not saying it does anything for me, but a lot of people in my community, Haitian community that I come from, they identify you with that name, they give you some kind of recognition based on your family name. So that said, again, the podcast is called Frankly Speaking with Sandra D. As you can see, I dropped the Dorsey. It's heavy. It comes with a lot of stories, let me just say. So yeah, so that said, I have a legacy of truth and honor in my family. And that is why I feel that I chose my family of birth to learn these lessons. And you don't have to believe what I believe as far as your incarnation, but I do believe everything on my journey has been setting me up for emotional intelligence, which is if you don't feel it, you can't heal it. Those among us who are going about robotically traumatizing other people when they're in leadership, the blind leading the blind, not working. I have a name for them. I call them the misleaders. They are misleading the world. And I am so grateful because there are new generations of people being born saying, not working for me. So I encourage you to really develop that emotional intelligence, which many of the great leaders of the past have been known to have, some on the right now. But are we encouraging that narcissism? Are we encouraging that robotic stance when you see a leader just reading a script and have no emotion, telling you A, B, C, D, this is what I plan to do, this is how it's going to affect the corporation, I don't care about what you think, go. And then you're like, oh my goodness, that doesn't work for me, but you have no voice. You're not allowed to speak up in the corporation, in the family, or in the government because the supreme leader has spoken. And supreme leader, we talk about it in some of these dictatorships or whatever. We have dictators among us, right? We have dictators. It doesn't have to be at the head of corporation. It could be a manager. It could be a VP. Anyone who has a little bit of power. You know what? Humans love power. Let me tell you, I love power too, but guess what? The power I love the most is the one that comes from within. The one that makes me feel so self-reliant, so contained, what's the word? So ungovernable. Because you can't control me. Because I got my voice, I got my view, I got my authority. You can't take that. Because what that gives me is freedom. So these leaders, I trust that we are cultivating an era of more emotionally intelligent leaders. And again, you go into your gut, you breathe. Is this a decision that's going to build or destroy? That's one question, right? You breathe again. Am I leading this group of people, this family, to expand and grow into the best idea, the best scenario? Or is this going to be a figment in history with the page turned? Just ask a few questions and your gut will tell you what the answer is. But guess what? If you don't have that emotional intelligence already, you can cultivate it. But some of these questions can be answered from that authentic place. But also, if you have a lot of ego that says, well, they better listen to me because I know better, that's not emotionally intelligent. So just giving you a scenario to let you know which one of the two you're governing by. And sometimes for me, I have to sit with it. I want to take people down. I'm going to take you. Oh, you don't know who you're dealing with because don't you know who I am? And then I realized that's not emotionally intelligent. That's just my ego speaking. And so more emotional intelligence, which means more wisdom, more holistic perspective, more grounding, more love, more empathy, more compassion. That's the kind of leadership I'm inspired to express. But when I'm in my ego, who the hell they are? Hurry up, snap, get it done. That's my ego. And so it's not an easy process. And sometimes you just have to go deeper and say, what's underneath all that anger? It's just fear. And I talked about last week how just because someone has billions of dollars doesn't mean they're not traumatized. And trauma is where, is fertile soil for narcissism. Trauma is, when you see narcissism, you have these people who are traumatized, whatever class system they're in, whatever gender, whatever religion, whatever. It's just trauma. These people are unhealed, and what they do is try to contain the pain. They don't want to feel it. But I encourage you, feel it to heal it. Because I do believe in reincarnation. I know that's just Buddhist philosophy, and I won't get into too much of that. But I'm here to heal. And I thought, is finance healing? Oh, absolutely. Finance is healing because the more financial you demonstrate, the more peace, right? I'm not saying that finances bring healing, but the peace within, or finances bring peace. It could be sort of a symbol of the peace. So I just want peace. I want peace for me. I want peace for you. I want peace for the planet, because life is better for me when I'm living among people who are peaceful. So I'm inspired to be a peaceful resident of planet Earth, and I inspire you to do the same too. And most importantly, be the leader, be an emotionally intelligent leader by developing self-mastery, empathy. Let me know what you think. Let me know if any topics that I touched on briefly on this episode, if you'd like me to expand on any of them, I'm happy to discuss with you, but make sure you definitely come back for more of these profound, fundamental conversations, and from the depth that I've navigated on this journey. And it is a pleasure always to share with you, and knowing that you are always the best part of my day. Subscribe to Frankly Speaking with Sandra D, and join us each week as we uncover stories of resilience, transformation, and the pursuit of your true affluence mindset.
And I won't sit down, won't back out. You can't ever shut me up.
Come and join me on this journey. I promise not to disappoint. Don't forget to make sure you like, subscribe, and share to be notified when a new episode is released.